We'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Our land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in a traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial.
Okay. Any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Seeing none. The agenda?
That the August 12, 2026 Haliburton County Council agenda be approved.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. Presentations, non-delegations. Just before we start the delegations, I'd just like to really welcome everyone for coming today and being part of this. And I want everybody heard. So we are going to go through the process of hopefully hearing everybody if time permits. I would like you to please give your name and the municipality you're representing. And I really look forward to the presentation, but we will take all the questions after the presentation. So I look forward to introducing Affordability and Governance Study Results Report. Jason.
Good morning. Thank you, Warden, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. First, I'd just like to take a moment just to introduce myself, Jason St. Pierre. I'm the CEO for the Eastern Ontario Regional Network. We were asked to participate and lead the study on this. And with us is Maureen and Jim, who I'm sure many of you have a long history of experience with and have met through this process, as well as Lisa Severson, the ERN Director of Communication, and Linda Saad, our Project Manager and Data Analysis person is here as well. I would like to thank the Council as well as the member municipalities and your trust and your confidence in ERN to complete the Haliburton Affordability and Governance Structure Review. We have completed what I feel is a very in-depth study in a very condensed period of time, just over 5.5, 6 weeks. We were able to conduct more than 22 sessions, outreach sessions, analyze that data and put together a comprehensive review and report, which Jim and Maureen will take you through today. We would also like to thank the elected officials as well as staff for the participation in this. This is a challenging topic at times when you start talking about governance and changes. But staff and the elected officials were very open and transparent with us in our discussions, as well as were the public, who freely discussed opportunities and challenges they may see within this. ERN is an organization. We are a nonprofit organization who has been working with Haliburton County for the better part of 16 years, primarily through broadband and cellular projects, as we are known as. But we have also done a number of other reviews, whether it be in housing, municipal service corporations, and other governance-related opportunities like this. So for us to take this challenge on, and I will say it was a challenge, it was an interesting challenge and it has been an interesting process. But it allowed us to bring in the right resources to help support a complex issue like governance and affordability like this. So through our organization, we were able to find the right skilled resources to assist through this process and to ensure that we had the right people at the table who could look at the data, do the proper analysis, and collect the information in a format that would be beneficial towards this study. Through this team, I do believe that we have completed a solid review in which the results will be shared with you today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maureen and Jim. And I thank you again for your time and your patience through this process.
Thank you. So maybe if we could put the presentation up, that would be great. I'm very pleased as a member of this team to be here today to share the results of the report. Maureen and I are going to work our way through the report, if I can make it go. Travis. There we go. Jason has brought a welcome and some opening remarks. I know Maureen will have a few words to say as well, but we're both really pleased to be here representing ERN. And as Jason said, we want to express our thanks as well to all of you and to all of your staff who freely gave, as Jason said, their time and shared the information that we needed in order to conduct the report. We didn't have anybody set up a roadblock or not be cooperative with us. So we really thank you and your staff for that. That's your leadership showing through. What we're going to do, as the agenda says, is to go through a little bit of opening remarks around the study overview, what we did in terms of engagement. We're actually going to flip and do the financials before we talk about what we heard. And Maureen's going to do the financials. And then we're going to get into the meat of the options or the governance model. So we have a fairly lengthy presentation to work through, but as His Honor said, at the end of it, we're happy to try and answer any of the questions that may come, and the whole team can participate should that be necessary. So we'll get underway. So just the opening slide is just a little bit about why the study was done. And, I have to offer my congratulations to County Council for taking this important step at this moment in time to do the analysis, to be able to provide information for the discussions that will come. But you're all facing pressures, and I think in part that drove some of the decisions. Aging infrastructure, you've got workforce challenges that we noticed while we're doing our report. Certainly rising expectations about services, and unfortunately a limited assessment base with a 98% residential assessment base. That gives you some challenges as well. Maureen will speak to that. Certainly there's pressures financially that are going to continue to grow, and our forecasts will prove that out. And there's certainly no doubt that the province has expectations around, as the slide says, efficient and sustainable accountable service delivery. So all of that is sort of a backdrop. What we set out to do was to look at your current financial and municipal environment as part of the work, gather the feedback. And what was really interesting about this particular study was the depth of the involvement of yourselves as elected officials, your staff, and the public through the survey, which we'll talk about, to get that feedback. And it's been really enlightening for us to see that. We looked at what future pressures are coming that you're going to face and how that might affect governance as a whole, and looked at the options, of course, for you to consider. And we hope at the end of the day that this study and any work that may come from as a result of this study will equip the future councils who are going to come to make an informed decision or decisions. And we hope that that's based on the quality data that we've been able to provide and the information that's contained in this report. So that's sort of why we started, or County Council asked us to start to do this work and what we set out to do. And we think we've gotten to a good spot. Jason mentioned the engagement piece, and I said that was a highlight for me of this work as well, was the amount of input that we've received from yourselves, from staff, and certainly from the public. We held 22 broad engagement sessions in that short period of time that Jason had mentioned, conducted surveys. We ran a public survey from June the 8th to July the 5th, over 570 submissions from the public. Combine that with the submissions that you gave us as elected officials and your staff gave us, we're well over 800 submissions directly in, which was pretty astounding. And we did a very deep dive into the data that all of that provided with the help of Linda and others. We looked at the service delivery review that was done in 2022, 4 years ago now. And we looked at different models across different jurisdictions to help us try and inform the advice that we were going to give you. And at the end of the day, and as we'll talk about, created and evaluated from our point of view 4 governance models for you to consider in terms of a governance framework. So I'm going to turn it over to Maureen now to take a deep dive into the financial side of things. So I'll turn it over to Maureen.
Good morning, everyone. And further to some of the comments that were made, I would also like to echo the comments with respect to your treasurers and your finance team.
Maureen, if you don't mind, we're just going to stop for a second. Apparently our live stream isn't working. Oh, if you can just give me a minute, apologize.
Thank you. So once again, I just wanted to comment that with the financial information that was provided, the data that was looked at, information was shared with your treasurers. I want to extend our appreciation and thanks to your teams, your finance teams for providing us with the information. They were very, very cooperative. And so then I'll start to go through that financial review now. So on this slide, we're showing the 2026 expenditure budget by category, and the levy or the operating budgets and the levy requirement amongst your municipalities ranges from 12.5 to 35.9 million. In total, across all 5 municipalities, the total expenditures are 102.4 million, and the levy is consolidated as 70.6 million. So the difference of that would be funded through grants and service fees and other fees for permitting revenue, et cetera. So on this slide, you can see that salaries, wages, and benefits at 42.2 million is the biggest component of your budget. So you're going to continue to see pressure in that area. And then under materials and supplies, 22.4, external transfers, transfers to capital for water and wastewater, 8.6 million, contracted services, 7.9. And then there's a few smaller ones. Debt servicing costs are 3 million. So it's really just to provide an overview overall. And with that, we'll move on to the next slide. So on this slide, we're forecasting operations. And what we did through this process for a forecast was we forecasted the tax levy through to 2031. And we took a very conservative approach to doing that. And in doing so, we assumed no additional staffing, no increases to the levels of service. We didn't look at debt to fund capital, for example. And so you can see how the levy requirement for an increase goes from 2026 up to 2031. And if we move on to, the next, that was operations. Thank you. Forecasting capital. Here's the capital budget for each of your municipalities from 2023 to 2026. You can see that most municipalities are relying on debt to fund their capital. The forecast that we've put out for the future years doesn't, as I mentioned, does not assume any debt. And the forecast assumes the use of reserves to the extent where possible, where we can use that to, sort of stabilize the impacts on the tax rate. We move to the next slide. Use of debt to support capital. So cumulatively, 28 million additional debt over the past 4 years is what is on a consolidated basis, is what the townships and the upper tier have been using. And just as a bit of information, based on a 20-year term, the annual cost of servicing $1 million in debt is $78,000. And the impact to the taxpayer for every $1 million in new debt is 0.3% to 1%, depending on the municipality. Go to the next slide. So here's the capital forecast going out to 2031. And we've broken it down by municipality. So at the top, it's Haliburton County. And then we can see Algonquin Highlands in the orange and Dysart, Ale in the green, and then Highlands East and Minden Hills. And so this just takes us out to 2031. And so the capital projection for 2027 to 2031 is relatively stabilized. Does not take into consideration things that have not been planned in the capital forecast that we have. Could move on to the next slide. Can I do it? Thank you. So here's your, a little bit of information on your asset management plan implications. So what it is showing is the blue bars are what your asset management plans are looking for you to contribute. The orange bars are what's forecast in your capital budget. So the gap is really your asset management, like your capital funding gap. You want to at least, through your asset management plans, you want to at least maintain the value of your infrastructure and your assets. And so you can see without increasing your capital and without doing something about your capital forecast in the future, you're not keeping your infrastructure and your assets up to the current state. Thank you. Through our review as well, there's been a reliance on reserves to support operations, and it's very difficult to avoid using reserves when you're trying to, I think, try to stabilize the tax rate. But all 5 municipalities have been relying on reserves to support their day-to-day operations. It's not a municipal best practice. And at the end of the day, if you're using your reserves to fund your operating budgets, at some point in time when that reserve is depleted, you've now got a much bigger challenge to try and fund that likely through the tax base. If there's no approved financial plan to eliminate the need to rely on those reserves, you're going to, at some point in time, you're either going to have to look at levels of service, you're going to have to, have a significant increase to your tax levy, rather than try and do something sooner than later to stabilize that variance. And the forecasts that we've put together assume no reserve funding to support operations as a better practice. So this is the reserve forecast out to 2031. So you can see that the reserves are being drawn down somewhat. It's really just to highlight reserves are used where they can be, and then and your reserves are trending down. So reserve continuity from 2023 to 2026. What we wanted to show is the contributions that each of the municipalities have been contributing. So, during this time frame, there was total contributions of 24.2 million. There have been total withdrawals of 45.1. So your net reduction in reserves is 20.9 million. And much of that more so has occurred just in the last couple of years. Operating forecast and the tax levy impact. So our forecast also looked at what that levy requirement is. And so you can see that the levy requirement is trending up significantly across all of the 5 municipalities. So tax levy impact without a governance change. So we had a conservative approach to our operation, to forecasting operations. We eliminated the use of reserves to fund and support operations. We maintained current capital. So we did not even bring capital up to where you probably should be bringing your capital up to. And we maintained reserves at the 2026 levels. There's no provision in this forecast of putting money back into reserves or growing your reserves. So through this process, the tax levy increased from 2027 to 2031. You can see across the top by municipality. It ranges from 27.7% up to, as high as potentially almost 80%. And then we're showing the average annual increase per $100,000 of residential assessment. And that's on an annual basis. And for a home that's assessed at $225,000, so we've talked about assessment and we've talked about impact, but these are based on 2016 market assessment values through impact. It shows you your annual increase that you will see to your taxes and for the county's portion, that is reflected in the township's tax billing. And so this is just a wrap-up slide for a financial summary over a 5-year forecast. It shows the levy requirement it shows the levy, asset management, capital, and our reserve balances out to 2031. So you can see the levies going up. You can see that your capital budget, which is the green line, is relatively flat. And you can see what's going on with your asset. Like you can still see the gap between your asset management plan and your capital budget. And then you can see reserves going down. But at the end of the day, you can see that the levy likely is primarily funding your operations because your capital is remaining relatively flat.
So I'm going to take this next piece of the report and the work and walk you through it because, as I said earlier, I think this has been one of the really interesting pieces or parts of the study around hearing from people about a whole range of issues. And we're going to walk you through at a high level, and there's lots of detail in the report about what we heard. Next one. The public survey, as you know, was open from June 8th to July the 5th. We received 573 responses. Of those, 78% were from full-time residents, just to give you an idea. And the circle chart just shows you sort of the spread of where those responses came from members of the public from the different municipalities. And you can just see the percentages there. This was a really strong response to a survey. It was so strong that in terms of the confidence level of what we heard, we have a confidence level of 95% plus or minus 3 or 4%. So what that really says is what we heard you can rely on as being the mood, I guess, of and the interest of members of the community across the 4 municipalities across the county. In addition to those particular responses, you'll see responses about another over 200 responses from council and staff that we're going to talk about. So really more than 800 individual responses to the survey work, which was very strong. Next slide. Some key themes came out of this engagement process, and we wanted to share it with you. And all of you participated, as I said. But the number one issue that came up across all of the participants, council, staff, and the public, was the concern about affordability and the tax burden. That was the central concern really from everybody, which was interesting to note that all of the groups had that same primary concern. We also believe, as a result of what we saw in the study, that there is a broad openness to change, but there's a bit of a caveat. That's and primarily it came from the public as well as others, but they're open to change so long as services can be maintained or improved. And of course, isn't that the goal? Really, what we're really talking about is service to the public and their requirements around maintaining services or improving them. That's I think the most reasonable goal that you would expect, and I'm sure that's the same objective that all of you will have as well. Residents also want good information, plain language, discussions and options, and to be transparent about if there are trade-offs in any change, what do those look like? What do those mean? They were very clear in that. There is a lot of interest in local identity, making sure that there's fair representation on any governance model that you may choose, getting the representation side right, and making sure that there's access to service in whatever model is chosen. And what also came out was that the environment is really important to people here in Haliburton County, and they want to make sure that change takes into consideration the trust that they have in terms of keeping the environment front and center as you work through. It's really important to the public. Staff and senior leadership throughout the engagement process identified a whole bunch of things where there are opportunities for collaboration. They identified things like planning and procurement, technology, roads, service standards, really all the same kind of stuff that was in the service delivery review, I think. And the other thing that came out, which was interesting for us and is important to know, I think, is the role that your libraries play. The rural libraries across the county, they're really essential service hubs that connect residents to things like technology and support residents in learning and community life. And it was really evident to us the kind of role that they can and are playing, perhaps in a future arrangement. So we thought we'd let you know that as one of the key things that came out. Next slide. Just in a little more detail, but at an executive summary level. It's okay. So what we heard through the survey engagement process was a very high level of support for change, but with conditions, as I noted. Maintain your services or improve your services was sort of the guiding principle on that one, along with some others. 82% of the respondents were concerned about affordability. So again, this notion of affordability and tax burden remains high on people's concern list. What was really interesting too was that 97% of the leadership in the 5 municipalities are open to some change. That's pretty important, I think. We received 142 staff submissions, 58 from submissions from you as elected officials and from the senior staff in the municipalities, from the CAOs and senior management teams. So when you combine those, that's where we get over 800. But what we really heard was, I keep saying, affordability is the defining issue here. People are concerned about being able to manage their finances. Property taxes are important to them, and the cost of living is a real concern, which is no surprise, I think, to folks. But they also want to make sure that there's value for the money that they pay into local government at whatever level. There's a strong appetite for cooperation. That came out in the survey as well. As I said, 76 of all the respondents, including staff and council, see opportunities to work together. And 91% are really back the idea of reducing duplication, so long as services can be maintained. So there is a real concern out there about duplication. Service quality, local identity, they're the guardrails around any change, as we say. And people will look at what happens in roads, emergency services, libraries, et cetera, as a way to monitor that in terms of how things might change or be improved. We also noted in this, and it's fair to say, because we need to tell you this, that your staff are stretched thin. Their teams are thin. Unfortunately, they're siloed in some areas, and the expertise is not in every organization the way it really should be. So there's opportunity for capacity building in anything you do, and that's an important feature of future work. The last bullet, and I think I've mentioned this, the leaders are ready for change, but the structure is a bit of a problem for it. So 97% are open to change and collaboration, but it's all informal today, and it's really personality dependent on whether it's being successful. And I would suggest that the limited success of service delivery review is a good example of where it's not working, and something to consider. So the bottom line is there is I think a mandate to explore change, conditional on maintaining or improving services. That's sort of the key takeaway to all of this is about that mandate. Look for change, but make sure our services are maintained or improved. And of course, that's, as I said earlier, that should be the goal of any change anyway. So this gives you a bit of a high level. There's more information, of course, in the report, more details in terms of what we heard. But this gives you, I think, a good summary of those kinds of submissions. We'll go to the next slide, Maureen. We just put this in a different visual way to see these priority themes. And you can see affordability, efficient service delivery, infrastructure investment, which is really important when you think about Maureen's slides around capital and the investment you need to make, there's a high interest in maintaining and improving your capital infrastructure. That's going to take investment, but it's a high priority item for the respondents. Staffing, even amongst the public, they recognize that staffing is key to ultimately delivering good services. So we wanted to make sure you knew that. Lots of folks talked about the need for economic growth, and you need to think about how you can make that happen, how you can improve, because your tax base is 98% residential, and if you can find a way to move that needle so there's less reliance on the individual residential taxpayer, that's going to be an important thing to do. And economic development is really the only way you can get there, is to try and find new growth. Preserving identity is important. We heard a lot of that. But we also heard that it shouldn't be a barrier to change. We have to be responsible and remember to find ways to preserve local identity. But that wasn't going to be a game stopper, if I can put it that way, for people. They know it's important, but they also are focused on those affordability and service delivery issues, I think more so. Speed of decision making, we heard lots about challenges around decisions getting made. There's lots of interest in doing things differently using modern tools. I'm sure AI will become part of everybody's lexicon at some point, but there are other ways of doing that. So lots of interest and openness to using different tools. Community revitalization is important as well. I think people want investment in their downtowns from what we heard, and other areas, which obviously would help around economic development and things. And the number 10 was around local autonomy. There's interest in local autonomy, but you can see where it fits on the scale of priority. So these are things to keep in mind when we're talking about what the options for change might be. We wanted to give you just a little more detail, and this slide talks about the results from staff in terms of their survey responses. And there's some important, I think, headlines, if I can call it that, from this particular slide. I think the most important one is further to the right, almost at the end, the 69% headline. And what that is this is your staff saying 69% of the respondents rated the current two-tier system of government in terms of its effectiveness from medium to low. Medium to low. They're concerned as well, and I think it's really encouraging that staff are very concerned about affordability issues as well. And isn't that a good thing that the members of your staff organization see this as an important issue, not only for themselves, but they were also thinking about it from their property taxpayers' point of view. 80% of the staff respondents are open to change. There's opportunity when you see those things that where people are open to change. Modernization, high on their list, as I mentioned just earlier. And of course, the quality of life in the community that they live in is really important to them as well. So there are some important things that I think come out from hearing directly from your staff, and we wanted to share those with you. And it really was. Lead with affordability as a key issue, build on strength, manage workload because they're concerned about workload. Local identity is important. But I keep going back to that 69% number where staff rate the current system as medium in terms of effectiveness to low. That's got to be a bit of a message, I think, to put it that way, for everyone. Next slide. So just in summary, what we heard from your staff, they're stretched, and I think that's very true, and we would agree with them. Current workloads are in some cases unsustainable, and it's the limited capacity is also limiting the ability to generate capacity and look at new initiatives. So that's a major concern for staff. There's no doubt that we heard from them, and I think it's true, that in smaller organizations, from a staff point of view, there's limitations on career growth. And this is important for retention, and it's important for attraction in order to have organizations large enough to offer staff opportunities to have long careers. They are concerned, as you would expect them to do, when we talk about the third box or on a major transition risk. They recognize that if there's change going to happen, there are issues around human resources, transition processes, all of those things you would expect, labor relations issues. So in any change, what they said to us was make sure that the process for change, that transition process, if there's going to be one, is clear and understandable and well thought out. And that's obviously very critical. Should there be significant change, you need to spend time getting ready to do that and have the right approach, the right policies in place in order to make that transition really work. But it is on the minds of a lot of staff members, as I say, as you would expect. There was concern about the inconsistent HR practices going on today across the 5 municipalities that could be better done if it were more standardized. And things like onboarding and better benefits, those kinds of things make a lot of sense to them in terms of some alignment. And the last box about expertise silos and gaps, there was a lot of concern about knowledge being fragmented, that there's too many silos, but there was also opportunity for capacity building when you see this. So the staff see they're stretched thin. They're concerned about their ability to grow in terms of their career. They're concerned about change. And if you're going to change, make sure you do it really, really well and thoughtfully, and try and fix some of those inconsistent practices that you have today and build some capacity and break down some of the silos. And you can do that with change when you're working through. The last slide is really a combination of elected officials, staff coming together, senior management teams, CAOs and elected officials around what they said. And there was a lot of similarities, as I've said before, in terms of what we heard. Concern about capacity, concern about the cost of living, and certainly the whole issue around affordability. So there is a synergy, if I can put it this way, between staff and elected officials and the public around change. That came clear in the results from the survey. And really all it says is it sets the table for you in terms of considering the next piece, which is around the models. People are interested in what might be the future for them. And the good news is, I think, is that people want to see some change. It's just figuring out what that change should ultimately be, which is, of course, going to be the next council's decision. But I'd like to say at the start, I want to congratulate County Council really for your foresight in and your prudence in doing this study. I know it's getting, I'm sure, a lot of attention right across the province. I'm going to guess that's happening. But to me, it's very clear the leadership that you're exercising in doing this kind of study at this time. At the end of the day, I think you're going to be giving the next councils coming in the time to consider what the future should be. And that's a really a well thought out and prudent way to deal with this. So congratulations to County Council and to the member municipalities for the approach that you're taking on this important, really important study. You're going to give time to make good decisions. And that's a great thing to do. So Maureen and I are going to go back and forth a little bit on the models discussion, but we arrived at 4 options in terms of governance models for you to consider. The first one, which is the current 2-tier model, the status quo, if we can call it that. And really that's maintaining what we're doing today, or what you're doing today at the county and at the local level with the 4 local municipalities. And we hope, if that's the choice, that there will be improvements around collaboration and service delivery. But that's certainly one option for you to consider, is the do nothing or the status quo option, I guess. The second model is a single tier municipality, 1 council, 1 administration responsible for all municipal services across the geographic breadth of Haliburton County. Model 3, we called it the enhanced county model that continued with 4 local municipalities at the local level. So the same number of councils would stay, keeping local councils, but there's a significant transfer of services from the local level to the county. And that's why we call it the enhanced county. And the 4th model is a variation on that, which is a creation of 2 local municipalities within the county structure, but still a substantial transfer of services upwards to the county. So Model 1, as I said before, is essentially the status quo. Local municipalities can continue to deliver your community-based services, local roads, fire protection, parks and rec, et cetera. Your municipal councils can continue to be made up of elected representatives in really the same way it is. You could change the number of council representatives on any one of your local municipalities, of course, at your choice. But it continues to operate with its own, each municipality with its own administrative structure and staff. It maintains the current strong local representation that you have and community identity, but it's going to require, if it's going to be successful, a lot of coordination and continuing work together to try and reduce duplication and improve what are, we feel, some inconsistent service levels and what people identified as inconsistent service levels. And there's a lot of complex accountability. So it's essentially the status quo, but hopefully if that's what you choose, you'll be doing things a little bit differently and trying to coordinate better. The budget, of course, for that municipality, it would be the budgets that you have today. I think largely, is that fair to say, Maureen? So nothing really changes on the monetary side. The single tier municipality, or Model 2, is the consolidation into the single municipality, one council, one administration, responsible for all of the services. Local access to services is something in transition that you would think about. Where would we offer the services from? Would it be in the same existing locations? Would there be different locations where we might be able to provide the services to the public? So that work would need to be done in order to fully bake out or build out the municipality. And there's a lot of work in that. You know, what kind of recreational facilities, where would the community hubs be? But that's all part of putting the municipality together. In our view, the model provides really the clearest way for accountability and the greatest opportunity for integration. And I would say the reduction in duplication and capacity building. It requires a complex transition process, but in my own experience, it can be done. You have to take the time to do it right and think it through. And you have to consider providing strong protections for local identity and making sure that you get the representation right. What would the council look like? And that's a discussion that you obviously would have to have, and you need to decide on whether there would be wards, would it be elected at large, how many, those sorts of things are all parts of the discussion that need to happen in a single tier arrangement. And they obviously can happen and should happen if you decide to move to that model. We need to talk to this.
So in this slide, we're just showing the budget of 102.4 million and how that's broken down by major areas of service. So you can see on a consolidated basis, you know, roads and bridges and your transportation network at 35% of the total levy. That's your biggest area of operation. And then you can see police and bylaw services at 12%, paramedic services, so your first responders, administration 17%, waste management is 6%. And then you can see on the far right-hand side, recreation and cultural services, planning and development, and social services. So this is just to give you an idea of how that overall budget would appear as one entity.
Model 3 is the enhanced county model with the 4 local municipalities. In this case, as I've mentioned before, the county would assume responsibility for a majority of the services, really that benefit from scale, specialized expertise, consistent standards and across the region planning, if I can use that, or across the county planning. Those include things like planning and development, building services and permitting, public works, infrastructure, waste management, and environmental services, and through the list. And I have another list I'll show you in just a minute in terms of the services. The county would continue to operate with its own administrative structure and staff, as would the local municipalities in the next slide. But what the local municipalities are delivering would be much different than they're delivering today. And we'll show you a slide in just a second, but it's really community-based services. We're customer service where you could touch people directly in terms of service delivery, recreation programming, community events, local heritage, local bylaw matters, and neighborhood level priorities. In our view, the model overview strengthens the regional capacity that's important for you. And it's consistent in preserving the local municipalities at the same time. But again, there's a careful thought out approach to the transfer of services. This is not, if I can put it this way, this is not shared services. This is a change in the delivery of services. Next slide.
And so on this slide, per Jim's comments about services that are now being provided by the county, what ends up happening is the Haliburton County's budget is approximately 92 million. And then you can see on the right-hand side how the frontline services for recreation, community events, arts and culture become something that's quite a bit less on the local municipalities budget side. So you can see the amounts of their budget would, for Algonquin Highlands down to a little over 3 million, Dysart just under 3 million, Highlands East 2.3 million, and Minden Hills 2 million. So that's just an indication with that model. The services that are being now operated and managed by the county are quite significant in comparison to the local municipality.
As I said, Model 4 is a version of Model 3. Instead of 4 local municipalities, you have 2. We've gone through the services that would be transferred and what would stay local, but essentially you're down to a county council, and 2 local councils that would be focused on those community-based services. There's more integration in this model than Model 3 as you bring 4 to 2. It will preserve some of the local governments. There is some transition complexity to it because of the change in boundaries and in responsibilities versus the 4. So this is just a variation in Model 3, but possible. And maybe the next slide, Maureen, you can see what it does for the budgets and where we thought the consolidation naturally would be based on boundaries.
So on this slide, the services delivered by Haliburton County would be the same as the previous model that I spoke to. And then on the right-hand side, we chose to put Algonquin, Highlands, and Minden Hills together as an example, and Dysart and Highlands East. And so you can see each of their respective budgets would be 5.1 and 5 million.
So just to reiterate that what we're talking about in these models is in 3 and 4, and of course in Model 2, which is the single tier, is that is a significant transfer of services, the movement of services to the upper tier. Those service transfers means that the full responsibility for them would rest with the county for those services that are delivered, and local service delivery is being redefined. And just to give you, because we thought it was really important to be specific, I think it's page 82 of the report sets out what we're really talking about when we talk about the transfer of services. So this is what the county would look like in a post world where you've either used Model 3 or Model 4. So the county continues to do sort of regional services but we're centralizing budgeting, treasury functions, financial reporting, and long-term financial planning for all the municipalities at the county level. This is this notion of human resources and IT. Again, that's moving up as a corporate service at the county level, but supporting the local municipalities, either the 4 or the 2. Land use planning and development coordination and all building services go to the county. Engineering and asset management, again, at the county level, shared technology expertise and infrastructure planning to help the local municipalities. But that specialty is and special services resides at the county. Facilities, we're recommending in these models that all municipally owned facilities would be managed at the county level. All transportation infrastructure, including local roads and operations at the county level. Water, wastewater, and environmental services, including waste management at the county. Housing and social services, continuation really of what is currently the situation at the county. Emergency services, paramedic services, emergency management, and policing services at the county. And economic development, tourism, and libraries at the county as well, including airport and library services would go to the county. At the local level, you'd have your local councils and the local administration, of course, for that. Recreation and community services, parks and recreation programming, cultural services, museums and community programming. Fire in these models stays at the local level. And local emergency response capabilities also stays at the local level. And bylaw enforcement around property standards and municipal bylaws would continue at the local level. So at the end of the day, what the study concludes is we've provided 4 options. We haven't made a recommendation because we felt that wasn't appropriate to give you a recommendation. You wanted to hear, according to the terms of the study, what options would exist. The scope was to assess the current structures, and I think we've done that, identify the pressures, and look at different models and what the trade-offs might be in terms of, for instance, service delivery. We know that it would be important for you, I'm sure, to make sure that there's a deep dive in any particular model that you think might be advanced. It was prudent, I think, to take the approach where let's see what the models are. And if we like any of them and we like some in particular or one in particular, then you need to do the deep dive into how that actually would look, how it would work. And that would be the next phase, I would think, in looking at it in more detail and getting more feedback. The engagement with the public at the front end was really good. I think that you'd want to continue that, to work with the public and staff around any particular model that you might choose. But again, the path forward is really about affordability. That I just keep reminding it. And when we spoke to members of the public or to staff, we said that our lens is really the affordability lens. What is going to be best at the end of the day for the taxpayer? I think all of us are in public service. And public service is really about people and the residents and the businesses in your community. And so keeping in mind their needs and their interests was a sort of job one in the way we developed the report. These are next steps. We've worked. I don't know whether Gary, you wanted to speak about this directly, but we worked with you on these particular next steps.
Yeah, thank you, Warden, through to the rest of the council. So as we go forward from today, one of the programs we're looking forward to is continue the step of, from an education and an information standpoint with the members of the public, but also in council, is re-engage the groups that we re-engaged the first time. We re-engage the public at multiple levels with general public meetings, but also focus groups around former elected officials, as well as identified community leaders. Recommendation going forward is that we re-engage those groups. We've set meetings up now and starting the week of the 24th of August, and I think they carry over into the first week of September. Now that the study has been done, similar presentation, some been made to council today would then be made to these groups and receive feedback on the findings of the report, both from the survey results, the economics on and the forecasting, but as well as the model structure as well, and what the impact that would have on a community-wide basis. That information again, and then also included that to Mr. Pine's point is we would also look at doing, with council's direction and authorization, to do now a deeper dive on the specific finances of the accepted models, so that as we move forward from the public input, some more information regarding what the models look like, what puts more form and structure to those models, as well as some more refined financing on the models. And going into post-election, into the new council, we can create a much more detailed information package to complement the study that we would provide to the new councils. We're targeting for the end of December, which would lead into the whole package coming back to council at the first working meeting in January, with a tentative second meeting set at the end of February for the new information to be considered by council, with the goal of having a decision sometime in that time frame, but also building enough time in as well should the new council want to engage the public further. Based on now that we're in the decision-making phase, there's time built in for that to happen over roughly about a month and a half process. And so built on top of that, I would be looking for direction going forward to start what would be the second phase of the process leading into the new term of council.
So, Your Worship, that concludes our presentation, and I think we're open for questions.
All right, thanks, Jim, Maureen, and Jason. That was very well done, and thank you for the presentation. I will open to the questions. I would like to go to counter comments. I'll go to County Council first, if you would. Deputy Mayor Warden, sorry.
Thank you. I don't have any. Thanks, Gary. I don't have any questions right now. There are a couple of comments that I would like to make. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you to all of those members of local councils who have attended here in public, and for anyone who's online listening. I'm very impressed with the presence of Minden Hills. It's nice to see so many of you here. I did want to say that the folks that have done this work for us, I have worked with all of them for a number of years, and I have a great deal of faith in their skills and capabilities. And I really thank you for the work that you've done. I know that a lot of it is initial work, but I truly appreciate the work you've done and have a great deal of faith in that. It's interesting, 12 years ago at I think it was a Chamber of Commerce meeting, there was 2 or 3 very well-respected local folks who were stamping their feet and saying there's nothing but amalgamation to be done. And I honestly thought, wait a minute, no way. Thinking about local identity and the reaction and all of the things, over time, you start to see the true need for change, that we truly do need to do something because we cannot sustain ourselves financially without massive increases in taxes or doing something different. No question about it. This study has made me really think about how to go about this. And to me, it seems that the one thing that we really need to do, and all of us really need to commit to, is working more closely together. Greater partnerships, more discussion. We need to play nice in the sandbox. I know you've all heard that before, but we really do, in order for us to improve things and keep life the way we want it to be here in Haliburton County. I'm a little bit concerned. I will say that looking at these models, I would expect that there's a certain amount of fluidity associated with the work going forward. I would hope there is. I truly only believe that 3 of them might work, given fluidity, and I won't say now which ones I think are the best, but I wonder if there's any room for this council to make any decisions at all. I know that we agreed that this information was going to go forward for the new council to decide on how we're going to go forward. But say, for instance, we're all kind of on the same page about one particular model or another. Are we going to spend money on doing a deeper dive on that? Because it's this council's money and this council's decision about, the financial commitment that we're going to make. So I just wanted a little bit of discussion or thoughts from other members of council about that, because we've spent a considerable amount of money, of taxpayers' money. We're going to spend more. And I'd like to see what other members of council think on where that should be focused. And if we want to go forward with all four models, if there's any thought about, look, we think we might be wasting our time with this or that. Anyway, just my thoughts. I will have some questions later on, but I would look forward first to hearing the questions from members of our local councils and other members of council. Thank you.
Okay, comments, questions? Councillor Shell.
Thank you. Just one of the numbers that jumped off the page for me was that you had the population of Minden at 8578, which was just a little over 2,300 more than Dysart. And I'm wondering how accurate that actually is, because I thought we were much closer in comparison to that.
We think it's based on, or I wasn't involved in that number, but I think it was based on census data, but we'll double check.
Other questions? Councillor Dayu.
Thanks again so much. This is wonderful for this council. It's especially wonderful for new candidates putting themselves forward who are just getting acquainted perhaps with municipal governance, municipal finances. What a wonderful primer it is for them to come fresh to these tables with really solid analysis and information. So thank you on our behalf and also on their behalf. I have two questions. One has to do with Model 1 and one has to do with Models 3 and 4. So Warden, maybe I could do one and then hear the answer and offer my second question.
Certainly.
Great. With regards to Model 1, there is a category of assets that I think many would argue sort of belongs between local municipal responsibilities and county responsibilities looking ahead. They would be things that are currently being run and funded by lower tier, but that have demonstrated benefits to the whole county. And I think about, Councillor Carter, we talked about this before, the arenas in Minden, for example, the airport in Algonquin Highlands, which is currently fully funded by Algonquin Highlands, but provides essential emergency services for the whole of the county. So how would you recommend we take that category of assets and build a process? Should Model 1 be considered for further review? How do we measure that category of assets across Model 1? That would be my first question. Recognizing you probably don't have the actual answer to that right now, but what insights might you have moving ahead?
Maureen and I will both take a shot at this, but essentially what Model 1 is recognizes the current arrangements, right? So those who own the arenas currently continue to have the responsibility for the arenas. The airport is staying where it is. But I understand your question is these are services that people across municipal boundaries enjoy or can enjoy. And how do you deal with those things? There's different arrangements around fees and those sorts of things that you can do. But if you're really talking about that they should be seen as broad area-wide services, I think the only, in my humble opinion, but Maureen might have a different opinion, is the transfer of responsibility to one organization. Probably up to the county in that case. So there's a degree of potential movement of services in those two situations, but it's a common concern where you have a facility like an arena where people from outside of the local municipality that built it and maintains its operations. How do you pay for that? How should people pay for it? I guess there's different ways to figure out a fee for that.
Yeah, and I think in addition to Jim's comments, I think you want to think about in an alternative model, how does that service maybe be better accessible or delivered to the residents in the region, right? So I'm not really familiar with the airport where I come from. There is a small airport as well in the SDG area, but that has a component of emergency response that really, also has implications to the entire area. And I'm assuming there'd be other organizations that would use the airport, whether it's Orange, RCMP, MNR. And so it's a way to have that properly properly paid for across the region. And so there probably would be some sharing amongst the entire area. Similarly, we had conversations often with staff on recreation facilities, right? When you're looking at recreation facilities, you don't want to compete with each other. You want to kind of, build upon what you have and make sure that you have the right facilities. Right? We heard lots of discussion about potentially an indoor pool, but you want to try and make sure that you have the right recreation available throughout the region, because people will drive to access those facilities. And I believe that we did hear from some of the public too, that people are traveling outside of Haliburton County to have their children play in sports. So there's opportunities there with those types of facilities for a better, I think, service delivery and coordination overall to make it available to the residents of Haliburton County.
Jennifer, go ahead.
No, that's great. And I think, recognizing that there is that third category of assets, just remembering it moving forward would be a great way to go, because you've already outlined some good ways of looking at it. So thank you. My second question has to do with models 3 and 4 equally. It's an extraordinary difference, the load of responsibility and expense for both of those models between the county and the lower tier. And I wonder, at what stage, and hopefully the answer is pretty soon, would we do a bit of a return on investment analysis of models 3 and 4 in terms of how much money and time would we be spending on elections, clerk fees, council salaries, et cetera, all of the things that go into running a tier of government in order to manage a $2.5 million budget or at best a $5 million budget. What would the ratio look like from the overall administration of that tier to what it's actually producing? And I think that would be revealing. So I wonder when that would be a suggested task.
I think I said at the beginning of my presentation that the approach that County Council is taking in terms of doing the work now so that the future councils can make decisions is really prudent. It will take time if you picked a model 3 or 4, it will take time to sort those things out and to figure out what is going to be, the arrangements, the budgets, all of those sorts of things for the services that would be delivered. But you're leaving enough time to do it and to do it right and to do it well. You could probably sense that, in the next municipal elections 4 years from now, you would certainly be in a position to have all of those things sorted out. I know you could do it quicker as well. 4 years is a fairly long period of time. But I think that the way that you've set the study up, provide information to the councils that are coming in, will give people the right amount of time to work through all of those things. And it takes work and it takes time and it takes, lots of considerations, but it's very doable. And in order to make your organization the right size, the right setup, you have to spend the effort and the time to do it. But you're not against a clock that's impossible, in my humble opinion. You've got time to think it through and to do it. If you delay making decisions for too long, then you're going to run up against the clock. But I think the way the CAO and others and County Council set it up, you've got the time to do all of the work that needs to be done.
And I think to your question with respect to like the ratio of costs and how that would change, that can easily be provided because that's already been incorporated into to be able to come up with the chart that we had to show what those amounts are. So that could be provided.
Councilor Rob?
Yes, first off, thank you very much for all the information you've given us. I really do appreciate that. I'm not sure if I came out with more answers or questions from what you presented, but nevertheless, it definitely gets everything in a thought-provoking mode. My question or comment is mostly related to what about the possibility of looking at some kind of a hybrid between 1 and 3? That is to say, looking at the 4 units as we are right now, but also looking at some of the information that would make more sense to transfer. And it could be in both directions. That is to say, some of the things that are done at the county might make more sense to do at the local level, and some at the local level might make more sense to go to the top. An example, planning. We're already looking at how to streamline and make things better in the planning facility. And I'm sure there's others that we could do the same with, without having to go into a total amalgamation mode. But there are other issues that are put in 3 that may or may not be popular or make sense in some of the municipalities. I'd have to be impressed with Highlands East being a well-performed, frugal portion of Haliburton County in the way we're doing business. Obviously, the pressures of finance are going to affect us just the same as anybody else. But there are certain cultural pieces that, in my mind, should be retained. And I'm sure it applies to all the other 3 municipalities as well. So I'm looking, is there an opportunity to not just look at the 4, but say possibly looking at combining the 4? Am I suggesting we should do it? Merely asking, can we find out what the opportunities would be? Because the costs may or may not be the same as they would be in 2 or 4.
I think you can do anything you want, to be honest. And what we did was try to give you what we thought made the greatest sense in terms of the affordability, in terms of trying to get things sorted as best you can provide the accountabilities and the clarity in models 3 and 4 with the transfer of services. But at the end of the day, the decisions are going to be yours to make. I think you need to recognize, this is my own opinion, the interest from the public and from your own staff about the concerns that have been expressed and the need for change. And so keeping that in mind is important depending on what you may, ultimately choose to do. But for a consulting team to say you can't do that would be wrong. It's obviously up to you. What we tried to do was give you what our best thoughts were around making a good transition to change, or you're staying the same.
Councillor Carter.
So thank you for all the work. Just echo everybody else here. We're all impressed. A couple of years ago, KPMG did a bit of a study to determine what the cost of living was for municipalities. And because municipalities were, the finances were mostly made up of scarce HR resources and then things that were associated with the cost of oil, whether it be transporting equipment, moving, your trucks around, buying asphalt and things like that. And they came up with a number that was in that 8 to 9% range, which I think if I remember the study, that was what you found, we had been living with over the last couple of years. And then as you projected forward, you projected at a much more conservative number. I guess you are the most familiar with having all these numbers together. But if we are going to go to a next stage of a deeper dive and trying to do various sensitivity analysis and so on, what kind of timing do you think would be involved in doing that type of work? Because, depending on some of these estimates of, the rates for the OPP going up 15% or this or that, as those things might change, that may give us a very different picture of where we are and how serious the issues are. So you have some idea of what it would take to go to that next level of analysis?
Thank you for that. And through you, Warden Burton, I think that we're somewhat waiting for, direction or feedback from County Council. That deeper dive could be done. it would probably be quicker if we weren't looking at all of the models. If it got kind of focused in on one or two, then I think that would allow more concentration and effort into those maybe two models that you want to consider. And I think that is the next step, right? Like, I think you do need to have that deeper dive with information. And there's going to be, although there's going to be costs that we need to make assumptions with, there also might be some other areas where we could project, potentially more capacity building, within the organization as well. That might, for example, might reduce, contracted services and outline components, right? So when you start to think about all of the professional fees and contracting out that you do across the region, if you had more capacity within, then, that might not be the case.
I guess my comment, Maureen, would be, is that up to this council or the next council?
Through you, Warden Burton, I think that if council wants to take on this step to do more analysis, I think that is something that could be done with this current council. I think that when you're looking at getting more information to make a decision, I think that is something that the current council can do. And I believe that the direction also that we're hearing, and we probably think is a very good process, is to get as much information as possible so that the future council can start to, prepare themselves and potentially make decisions on this matter on a transition or steps forward, once that new council has been formed.
Thank you. Councillor McKechnie.
Yeah. Thanks, Warden. I just think that this process is so darn important to the future of all of our municipalities, the county. And it's this decision is, I don't know whether you get a second shot at it or not. I want it to be known that I'm very passionate about my community, municipality Dysart, and I'll be in favor of whatever is best for our taxpayers. We all don't want higher taxes, and we don't want our services to go down. I think it's important that our communities have, they have a real feel for talking to councillors, or and I just don't want that to be lost. There's so much that our four municipalities have to offer. We're all different, and it's such a great. We're all so proud to be in our own municipalities. I just can't understand why, in 160 pages, that there isn't some comments in regard to amalgamations that have gone on in the past. You would think that if a full-blown amalgamation, one-tier government would produce lower taxes, like way better services, especially with the reduction that's going to be made with staff and in other areas. I just feel that this process right now is being really rushed, especially for the new council coming in. There's 8 of us sitting around here, and I don't know how many of us are all going to be back. I'm sure hoping I'm going to be, and I'm sure everyone who's sitting here is hoping the same thing. But this is a very important decision to be all of a sudden you're green. You haven't been on county council before. And you're going to make a decision like this, and you're talking about December, January. To me, I feel that process is just moving way too fast. I wonder, as taxpayers have asked me this question, if one of our municipalities, if the auditors have not finished their financial statement, how does that affect the financial process going forward in this amalgamation? Like, how does that affect it? I'm wondering. And I'm gonna, just somebody sent me this when I was driving over here today. One of my examples of post-amalgamation. Kawartha Lakes, they must have looked it up this morning. Kawartha Lakes employee compensation jumped by 52%, which spiked property taxes. Haldimand County property taxes rose by 50%. North Folk County Long-Term Department increased by 111%. They followed up with North Folk County's sharp rise was due to inadequate reserves of the former municipalities and infrastructure backlogs. Like I say, I'm all in favor of what's best for municipality of Dysart. And I just don't hear or look, I can't find her. I have friends of mine, or I'm telling them, send me some good stories about these amalgamations that happen. And I know that what some people around the table are going to say, they're going to say, well, we're going to do it right. Or are you trying to tell me that Kawartha and North Folk and Haldimand, that they didn't go into that thinking that they're going to do it right? So I'm all in favor. I want Dysart to have lower taxes. I want them to have better services. I'm on board. But I don't see a lot of positives. I see a lot of information, a lot of numbers, but they don't seem to result in. So thanks very much for your time.
Any comments? Jim?
Through you, Warden Burton, I think Jim and I would both like to add some comments, and thank you for your sharing of your comments and your questions. I think since we've talked about financial statements and financial services, maybe I could just, speak to maybe the benefits of that area being consolidated into one. So yeah, you have multiple treasurers, and you have multiple finance staff, but you're dealing with 5 audits, 5 different audits, 5 different financial statements, preparation of 5 different budgets, 5 different asset management plans, 5 sets of FIRs. And so if it was a team that was consolidated, it could be properly structured to build capacity. And it might also provide better opportunities and building of your team if you're part of a bigger group. And so to deal with one audit, one auditor, you have one budget process where now you have a team, they're all working together on the same budget process. And with respect to cutting taxes, I don't know that County Council wants to commit to cutting taxes. I think what you would hope through this process, or what we plan through this process, is you're building capacity, and then you're also maybe having capacity financially to put more money into things like infrastructure and capital. So the gap that I referenced. So those are just a couple of comments with respect to like a financial services department, because and I think that your finance staff could appreciate that and understand that there's a better team to help with all of those things that are sitting on the corner of the desk, but are hard to do when you have it teams so small in a township in comparison to bringing everybody together. And then.
If I may, and I really appreciate hearing your views and comment as well. Councillor, in addition to what Marina said around finances, the one slide that stuck out for me and we talked about today was what the future looks like in terms of your levy increases going forward in terms of if you don't change. And I think you need to look at that and say, is that the future that you should have in terms of the taxpayer? But I'd like to speak about my own experience. You asked about success stories when there's been change or amalgamation. I lived the city of Quinte West amalgamation. That was 4 local municipalities. Township of Sydney, where I was the CAO at the time, we were 16,000 people at the time, really strong financial position. The city of Trenton, township of Murray, which was in Northumberland County, village of Frankfurt. And we all came to the recognition or the realization that we could stay the same. But what we wanted to do was more. And we realized that on our own, we couldn't do more. And we weren't in our heart of hearts. And I remember having these conversations. If we said, if public service is about the public and service, what can we do differently that will improve things and make things better so that we can do things like build new facilities for them, new arenas, new fire halls, new public works buildings, all of which were designed to deliver services better, invest in the fire service itself. And we made a decision that we needed to change. And I think if you look back where we were in 1995 and 96 to where the city is today, it's much different. It's growing and it's provided different levels. They were able to hardtop all of the gravel roads in 1 year across the whole of the municipality. It's about the same size as, it's not quite the size of Haliburton County in terms of geographics, but it's twice the population or thereabouts. So I always point to the city of Quinte West as being an example of a success story where they took the time to develop the organization, put people's assets together in terms of the municipalities where there was opportunities for growth. City of Trenton had water and sewer services. The city of township of Sydney had growth potential. It had land, which Trenton didn't have. Murray had the same. Frankfurt brought a different kind of arrangement with the small community, the village. But together we became an organization that could actually grow and prosper. They drove down the reliance on the residential taxpayer by attracting new growth. Gary will remember we were able to open an industrial park and service it and attract businesses. So it's a lot about the future. To me, it's a good example. There are other examples where it happened in a different way, where they were forced together. City of Kawartha Lakes was an order, right? It was merged. Some others were merged, but in the case of the city of Quinte West, it was the four communities coming together and working to find a better way to provide services to the citizens. So it's an example, I think, that is worth looking at. But it was a conscious decision to come together and do it differently. They spent a lot of time talking about what's the right way to represent, in terms of the elected officials. Was it wards or whatever? And we spent a lot of time talking about what would make people feel the best. And it worked through all of those issues. We had a transition board that had a full year to put things in place, which is a compressed time, but they made it. And I think at the end of the day, if you ask the staff members in Quinte West, and Gary, you were there, that the larger organization gave more opportunities for the staff in terms of their careers, which is a great thing. But more than anything, it built capacity to do things differently and better.
Thanks, Jim.
Could I make a comment, please? That sounds like a great story, and that's fantastic. But I mean, right now I'm representing the municipality of Dysart, sitting here, and it would just I couldn't imagine one of these other three stories that I just read out, and I imagine there are other positive ones, and I just don't know why would not anybody, if you're program that you put place with such a success, well, why would not all these people following to amalgamate not follow your program and do what that you did to make it so successful? Like I'm not here thinking that we don't need to, I understand what's down the road here in regard to money. We definitely have some big concerns about money. I understand that. But I just feel this whole process, I'm repeating myself, is just running way too fast for a brand new council coming in. And I'd like to see it slowed down. And I'll try to be quiet then. Thank you.
Just before, Councillor Casey, I'd just like to say, Jim, with 20 West, it would be a fair bit different, in my opinion. You could probably correct me if I'm wrong. The tax base you guys had there, to me, is a lot more industrial, commercial than we could ever dream of having here, which I think would help what you're doing, and the population. And I just wonder if you had a comment on that at all.
Yeah, there is difference for sure in terms of the assessment base. In addition to the commercial base, of course, they also have the 8-wing Trenton, the Air Force Base, which is significant asset as well to the communities. And what we did was, when you looked at what all 4 municipalities could bring together, we realized that together there were much more opportunity. And that's all I'll say about that. It is different. It's really, change is hard. I appreciate change is hard. And, you have to work through that.
Councillor Casey.
Yes, I echo more or less everybody's thoughts here on that note. And, if I repeat myself, it might happen. But anyway, thanks again for your time on this. And again, we all want progress, but should be very cautious of change. This is, as I've said before, very similar, or it is a merger/acquisition. And we need very solid financial data and efficiency data as to how much will be saved on that note. I'll refer to your conclusions there in bullet 4. We need much more defined detail. Show us the money, show us the efficiencies, and then we walk through the process of how we're going to collectively vote on it or implement it. And I echo Walt's comments. It's a lot. It's going to be the biggest decision since the county's inception of this amalgamation, or whatever we do to improve the efficiencies there. So again, we need a crystal clear picture of its benefits. So coming up, I would support evidently a further deep dive. I was listening to Councillor Ryall's comments there, and I on the surface I agree, like a hybrid approach, definitely. But again, we got to get back to the very facts of what this is going to save, because it's a big step. In the interim, we've had several service delivery reviews at the county level on that note, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but some of the things that were suggested there in terms of efficiencies throughout the other townships have not been implemented. So while we're walking through this thought process of further efficiencies on a countywide basis, I would suggest that we work on the suggestions of the service delivery review as we're doing that. And it's being been here in the township for so long, and personally we work in all 4 different municipalities. I feel immediately or right away we could also work on unilateral cooperation between between townships staff for processes, for examples of septics, buildings, snow plowing, and all that stuff. Very easy and very fast to implement with good results at the end of the day. And lastly, I'll also mention, because we're again in the business of road building and bridges and stuff like that, there's several different components that we could instruct or advise staff to look into in terms of products and services, and is to build things cheaper or more efficient or what have you. Bridges, for example, different style of bridge could cost us $500,000 instead of 3 or 4 on that note. So it greatly reduces capital expenditures on that note. But anyway, just some things we could work on now versus when, as we navigate the bigger picture here. But anyways, that's all I have to say.
Any response, Jim or Maureen? Okay. Deputy Mayor, Deputy Warden.
Thank you. Couple of questions. One of the things, if we're going to do a deeper dive, one of the things that is always kind of, rumble around in my head has been the structure of county council. The fact that we're 8 members. And I mean, there are no councils that have equal number of members. It's just, somehow not quite right. I know that we need to find a balance with the weighted vote versus the number of members of council. And I'm wondering when we, if we do a deeper dive, if that's something that we're going to look at, the number of representatives from each municipality, whether the weighted vote is still going to be, part of the calculations, because if say, for instance, Minden and Dysart have 2 members on the council and Algonquin Highlands and Highlands East only have 1, how that would all come together. So I would hope that that's one of the things that we look at. One of the questions that I've got, and I found interesting that, that the response that we got from staff was a real solid acknowledgement of need for change. Were there any specifics raised, or was that more a general look, we know we need to do something? Were they specific in what kind of change they were looking for?
In many ways, it was general, but it was also specific too. They often talked about HR. They often talked about sort of treasury and financial services, the need for better engineering services across. So there were some specifics, but I think it was a general sense that it could be better, right? The survey results were pretty clear that. I think, and it was 67% said that it was from moderate to low in terms of the effectiveness of the current organization. If you had anything to add.
Yeah, we did hear of examples throughout our employee engagement sessions and touched on roads, certainly.
Fire.
Yeah, emergency response, emergency management. So I think people spoke to it based on what they were familiar with and what their area of domain was in delivery of service.
I have to say that I find myself somewhat in agreement with what Councillor Casey and Councillor Ryle have said about looking at, is there a blending of some of the options here that we can look at, and I kind of hate the idea of throwing out the service delivery work, and it's like throwing a baby out with the bath. There was so much work that went into that, so much effort that went into that, and guaranteed lack of success. But some of the things that we saw, for instance, and I see that they've shifted in the work that you've done. I was very surprised to see in the service delivery review that fire came forward with recommendations that were very, very positive about working together, and it was something that I completely did not expect, because there's so much testosterone in that department. I mean, they just all, had challenges. Sorry, but I mean, it's true. And you're suggesting that fire remains, with the lower tier. And I was kind of interested in that and think there needs to be a little bit further work done there. And with respect to emergency response, one of the things that came up in the service delivery review was specific to communications, I think, more than anything, was that there be a consolidated emergency response. If the county hire an emergency response coordinator, if that was something that some of the fire chiefs weren't necessarily comfortable with doing, it was like just a little bit different, that I just kind of hope that there could be some consideration given there. One last point that I do want to make is that Mr. Pine, I believe that you are probably the holder of the most experience of anybody in this room when it comes to this subject and municipal operations. And I know that you have suggested that you were not going to make a recommendation about the options that were being put forward to us. It was not part of the terms of reference for you, but I'm going to put you on the spot and say, which one of these options would you choose? I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it.
Jim, you don't have to answer that.
Yes, he does.
No,
Sorry, Dave.
I think that was a bit unfair.
I think if you look at the report in Model 1 offers the greatest opportunity for the reduction in duplication, the most opportunity around building capacity.
You mean Model 2?
Sorry, am I mumbling?
No, my understanding was Model 1 was.
Yeah, sorry, I meant the single tier model.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I've lived my last 21 years of my municipal career in a two-tier system as CAO for Hastings County. And had lots of experience. I was the first CAO in the city of Quinte West and had that experience.
Council, I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break and then we'll continue with the lower tier, I hope. Okay, thank you. Call the meeting back to order. We'll certainly open the floor to any of the lower tier people for questions.
Speak to process first.
Oh, go ahead, Shannon.
Thank you, Warden. Just before we get back into the council questions, from point of clarification, I want to speak briefly on a process as Councillor McKechnie rightly brought up around timing or process. So we've set in the presentation, we set some identifications of bringing things back to the new council, information sharing by mid-December, the first council meeting in January 13th. Those were benchmarking that this pace of process and the style of process is the decision of the new council. We just put those dates in there placed as a benchmarking piece because we think we can get the level of information we need back to council by that time frame. But the timing of process and the process by which it goes through, that is the decision of the authorization of the new council coming in. And also with respect to some of the commentary around, I think it was Model 3, around the listing of the services that would be moved around. Again, those are decisions that council can make as they go forward. If that's one of the models being looked at, that part of the discussion would be what's the magnitude of that service level shift between the two layers of government. That's all part of the discussion and analysis as well. It's not, shouldn't be viewed as a finite thing. It's viewed as a point to look at and part of the analysis going forward.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Please state your name and municipality. Angela.
Angela Lewis, Ward 2, Highlands East. One of the things that I want to, and it's going to be addressed at a later time, will be the financing on this and what that looks like. The second thing is going to be for us is the electoral. We are farthest away from Haliburton, the core of how this is going to look for the models 2, 3, and 4. And so it's very important for us to understand where our electoral is going to sit at a seat and representation for any of the other models if the incoming council decides, you know, on one of the other 2, 3, and 4. I'd also like to point out if we could, this is really for me, and because I believe it's 3 cottage associations that have been involved. And so as this is moved forward and rushed, they don't have a chance to even speak. So I would really like to if we could involve all of the cottage lake associations, even if it's going through their presidents, because they have a voice, and that's one of the complaints that they have, is that this has been rushed and they didn't have a chance to come forward. And then I do have what happens when all of the municipalities maybe choose something different? What happens then?
Thank you. Jim, who was going to respond to that?
I'll try with some assistance from the other EORN folks on the Lake Association question. I believe letters went to all of the lake associations that we were aware of. I think we got that list from the county, Lisa, to give the cottage association information on what the study was about. So we did reach out to the cottage associations. Did we have any attend the engagement sessions that we knew of? Yeah, not they identified, but it is true. And I think if further communication is required, you absolutely want to make sure the lake associations are well informed.
Gary, did you have a comment?
Just from a process standpoint, so we will be re-engaging in the public engagement as we go forward. So there will be 4 specific public meetings that will be held, one in each one of the local municipalities, as well as other focused ones as well. So there will be the general information that goes out there, as Mr. Pine did mention. There was direct outreach to the lake associations at the start of the process. That will continue again. So it's just the opportunity was provided. It just not a lot. It wasn't taken up with during the first phase. But I think now that the study's out and this information out there, there will be much more uptake into the next level of public engagement.
Other questions? Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you. Tammy McKelvey, Councillor at Large, Township of Minden Hills. One of the things I would question is the cost for the next stage of trying to do the financial analysis on 3 and 4 really is what jumps out at me. It's basically bringing the lower tiers to a skeleton, and I just not sure it's wise to keep or put a lot of money towards that analysis. Just my thoughts. But the other thing I just want to clarify, I believe Walt was trying to ask a question and perhaps it wasn't understood. His question was how do you go forward with the financial analysis when you have one municipality with no financial statements right now? I believe that's what you were trying. And so I don't know if Jim or Maureen can elaborate on that question. And then I will have another one after that if I could.
So through Warden Burton, with the financial information without the financial statements, we would then require getting that information from the municipality, probably through, probably working on budget more so than actuals from a financial statement perspective. I think that when you're looking at, projections overall, like the accuracy to get down to that detail, I think it probably could be done without formal financial statements. That would be ideal, but we could still the municipality with respect to budgeted information and expenditure to date type of data.
Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you. Having experienced an amalgamation in the past, I just think it's really, really, really important that I know everybody's feeling this is rushed, but I don't want to see, in my opinion, again, having been a previous staff member, it's really difficult on the staff when you spread this out over 4 years. And I don't know if there's any thought, once any decision is made, if the process can be expedited and an election advanced, or does it have to be 4 years for that sort of thing? It's just, that's a big, probably not going to be a black cloud, but they're going to feel like it's a black cloud hanging over their heads. And I think the staffing is really important that we try to understand what that's like for them as well. So just my question, I guess, is can the next election date be moved up as part of any restructuring?
Gordon, I think I can answer that question from a process standpoint, and it's a valid question, one we've actually been working with, and while we're setting dates going forward to recognize the impact of the duration of the study. So with respect to going forward, depending, again, it's all going to be predicated on which option is chosen, because it's at different levels of implementation based on the model taken. If it is model 2, which is single tier, a lot of that will be dictated through negotiations with the province with respect to the structure around changing into a single tier government. But again, from past experience, those type of things, you can achieve that within 14 to 18 months period and getting that done on the details on that. And then again, the only really experience that's relevant to us now is 26, 27 years ago, back to 2000, where there are options around transitional boards that carry the new entity through until the next election cycle, which would be 2030 in this case. So you're building a new structure, you're creating and you're managing the new structure with the new council for the new structure elected at the next election cycle. So all that would be applicable to model 2 being the piece. If it's model 3 or 4, so I'll use model 3, which is, I believe, is just the transition of certain powers to the county. That's still an involved process, but it's much more internally contained, where the councils are maintained at that point. So it dictates, but anything going forward, the recommendations on process would be starting the change as soon as possible within the one chosen, so that there isn't that long drag out for the implementation, so things are set up going into the next election. But
Travis, can you put the people online? Can you bring them up so I can just see if there's anybody there that has a question, please? Sabrina, go ahead if you would like.
Thank you. I think that this report has been very good. It's been very high level. I think it lacks some context in some cases and data. And so I think it's impossible for anyone, any member of the public or council, to decidedly choose which model is best today. However, I think that in order to move forward to get that level of detail, you need some direction. And I understand that. And so I think status quo versus full amalgamation will give you that data for council to understand exactly which model or hybrid of models would be better going forward. You know, there's, for example, a choice to perhaps leave out recreation. And I think that's in an attempt to preserve culture in different municipalities. But for example, you know, recreation can also include tourism, which, just speaking for Algonquin Highlands, stretches over borders in campsites into Dysart and Minden, that although neither of those municipalities receive funding from revenues of it, they also don't share in the costs of it. Although it's the entire county benefiting from tourism, and the businesses in the entire county benefiting from that tourism. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that recreation be off the table when having the consideration that it be brought up to county. Like waste. Waste isn't necessarily one that should be automatically put up to county. We need to see in each center that data to understand what impact it will have to each municipality individually, not just as a whole. And so, you know, nobody today could say what is going to be better because we don't have that data. We need to get that data going forward so that the next incoming council has the opportunity to discuss. And I am disappointed to understand that that decision-making will remain at the county level and not go back down to the local municipalities. Because I think it's important that that happens.
Thank you. Cam or Nancy, any questions? Cam?
A number of years ago, Hastings County closed down their roads department. Those duties were transferred over to the municipalities. I believe Mr. Pine may have been involved in that. Was that a success story? Did that save money? And following that, could that be a consideration here?
I wasn't involved in the decision at the county to disband the county road system. That happened in 1998, I believe. And I was the CAO in the township of Sydney at the time. So it was a decision made at county council level. And the difference, I think, in Hastings' case is the county road system didn't go throughout the whole of the county. It really was just the central and southern municipalities that were part of the county road system. The northern municipalities were not. Hastings, Highlands, and others, for instance, weren't part of the county road system. There weren't any county roads all the way through. I think my own sense of it is that the municipalities in Hastings locally have struggled with the burden of maintaining all of the roads that used to be for the ones that were county roads or former provincial highways. It's been a struggle because the cost of operations and capital investment in roads, as everybody knows, is really significant. So I remember at least 3 times as I was the CAO of the county council asked for an analysis, a study of whether they should go back to a county road system. And each time they just never got to a decision on it, whether to change it or not be, and have continued on with the way it is now. My own personal opinion is there are certain roads that require higher investment and need higher investment, and you need the financial capacity to do that. And in some cases, some of the municipalities in Hastings County are very small. It's a real challenge for them.
Thanks, Jim. Nancy, did you have a question?
I did. I just had a couple. This will kind of be to Maureen. So although we're very aware that the whole county and all the municipalities have aging infrastructure that need replacement or repair, and you put in there that the assumption that there going to be no new debt. So if there is going to be new debt, which there is, how will that be covered with any of these models? Is it not going to have some impact on the tax base?
So through you, Warden Burton, thank you for your question. So I think there is a reasonable use of new debt if you're building, potentially like a new facility, something that you want to finance a little bit longer term. But what you don't want to use debt for, you do not want to use debt to maintain your existing infrastructure. That you should be funding on an annual basis. But when you want to take on something new from an investment into, like whether it's a new recreation facility, if it's a new municipal facility of some sort, those types of investment, you could consider using debt and that would be the best practice. But any of your infrastructure that you're trying to maintain, you really should be trying to fund that without taking on new debt. Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course. Thank you. And my next question was on our slide presentation on number 49, the annual AMP requirements. Do the lower tier requirements that are in your chart there, are they inclusive of any of the portion that we pay to the county? I mean, that's the county's AMP requirement, but is the Dysart AMP requirement part of that county total?
So that includes the county and also the townships.
So what Dysart is paying, what our requirement AMP is, does that include the portion that we would automatically have to pay to the county?
Sorry, I just want to look at the slide that you're referencing to make sure that I'm answering your question properly. My apologies.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So, can you just repeat your question again? So I have the slide. And you're
Okay, so it summarizes the annual funding requirements for each municipality.
Yeah.
So the county's requirement is $8 million.
Yeah.
Everybody else's is listed there. In the amounts of the townships, is that inclusive of the portion that we send to the county?
That would be inclusive. So the 7.6 million gap is across the 5 municipalities on a consolidated basis between what is being contributed and what the gaps are between what you're funding in capital and what your asset management plans say you should be investing to maintain your assets.
Okay. Thank you. And it's just, I find it a bit confusing because it's not 5 municipalities, it's 4 lower tier, the counties. I don't consider them a municipality. So it's just, when you say that 5 municipalities, it just throws me off a bit and makes me think, who's the 5th? The other question is, there at the very beginning of the presentation, they said they had 573 public respondents. But again, the population for the county is 20,000. So the public response was about 3%. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and then further in the presentation, it's like 97% of the respondents. So even though it's 97% of that 3% that has given an opinion. So I truly believe that for this to be positively promoted to the community so that people can have input, understand how changes would impact them as a ratepayer, there needs to be more time. I don't think 3% of the whole population giving a response to these options and questions is an appropriate amount. But I mean, I thank you for all the work and all the public input and stuff. And I wonder, you said you had a lot of input from staff, and we really appreciate our staff for doing that. Is there any way we could have council could be given some reports on that so that we can help our staff, or that perhaps processes can change to make things work better for them?
If I may, Your Honor, through you to Councillor, in terms of the survey, I think I said at the beginning of the presentation that the confidence level for the survey representing the broader public, so more than just the 570 that responded, is about 95%, plus or minus 3 or 4%, 95% of the time. So in any survey model, the industry standard is our confidence level is extremely high. You can, in other words, you can rely that it represents the broader community, if I'm getting this right, 95% of the time. So that's why we say that there's a high confidence level as a result of the study. And like any survey that any other survey company does, they sample a representative of the popular number of the population, and then they extrapolate from that. In our case, 570 responses represents a very high confidence level at 95% that it's representative across the whole of the community. Is that right, Lynn?
Thank you.
Okay.
The second question around the staffing input, I think there's further details around comments that we've received from the staff through the survey that's available in the report, or could be made available.
Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes. I'm just going to open the floor up. If anybody on the floor has a question, just please stand and state your name, and we would like to hear. If there are any.
They're going to have to go to a microphone.
Going to have to find a microphone somewhere for you, but if there's anybody out there that would like, more than welcome.
You can go to the.
How about over?
So in front of me so I can get to the right page. My name is Greg Bishop, if you don't know me. My last 4 years was on the Ontario Land Tribunal, dealing at the provincial level and dealing with the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Attorney General. So I've got some familiarity there. So the real first question, and this may be a real dumb question, but why not ask the dumb questions? I'll get to the right page. I'm a visual person, so I printed the whole report. Page 57. You've got the whole report. So maybe I'll just read it and just to have me understand it. Based on the combined 2026 operating budget, 1% tax levy increase would generate approximately $706,000 compared to an average of approximately $141,000 for each individual municipality. Well, first of all the municipalities transfer money to the county. Therefore, their percentages appears higher because of those transfers. Is this just not semantics? It's still all the same dollars. It's all still coming out of the same taxpayer pocket. And whether you say to the public, oh, we're only going to raise 1% if we are all committed all together, or we're at a 4 tier, well, gee, we had to raise 4. It's because we needed more money for the county because it's a transfer. I'm just trying to understand how the amalgamation, it's all the same dollars. I'm just trying to understand the math, I guess, on that. Page 57. I'm just trying to understand that. Maybe just a dumb question, but I still think it's just coming from the same pocket, just in different ways, maybe.
So my apologies. So we're talking about a 1% levy increase of 706,000. And then what was your,
So if under one tier, if we're under one tier and you're trying to raise cash flow,
yeah,
a 1% increase would generate 706,000 if we're all combined.
Mhm.
But at the 4 township level, having us all split, it's only generating 141,000 for 1% for each of the municipalities. Isn't that just semantics though, because of the transfer payments from the townships to the county? In other words, the townships would have raised 2%, theirs by 2% to increase to get the 706 total we need to fund the county as well.
so perhaps it is semantics from your perspective. I think from a budgeting and cash management perspective, as far as looking at priorities, $706,000 is more money to look at allocations for specific needs that might not be spread out across the 4 local municipalities, right? So it's really about consolidation of that funding. And then it allows council to make decisions, based on, like, some things might get a priority over another item, given the budget year, given, we talk about asset management plans and capital plans, right? So having that money, or have that increase in your taxes in one pool, gives council, I think, a better opportunity to look at the priorities across the region. So you're right, semantics perspective, but $706,000 on a consolidated basis might be more attractive to look at specific initiatives.
Totally understand that. Trying to do larger projects. I totally understand that for sure. I'm just looking at, it's the same dollars, it's just in different pockets as they flow through the process. The other thing too is, and this is just a comment, I don't have any other questions, but there's no doubt you're going to get involved in the province if you go to one tier. There's no question they're going to be involved in the process from start to finish. And what I look at is, how do we leverage that with the province? How you as councillors can leverage that with the province. So for instance, as an example, whenever it was signed back in the day, for policing, for instance, the policing contract that we have today is based on the number of properties in the county. It's not based on the number of houses in the county, it's based on the number of properties in the county. So I happen to own 70 of those, but I only live on one. I have a cottage too, so that's 2. I think I was pulled over by the police last week for speeding for the first time in 20 years. So that was my interaction from the police force for almost 20 years here now. Yet the funding formula we have with the police, with the province with regard to policing, is based on the number of lots. So I think we need to boldly look at all this and decide how we can leverage this if you do choose to go one tier. It's time to really look and focus at what our contracts are with the province in general and see whether we can focus on those things and leverage those as we move forward to maybe combine, if we're actually old enough to do the combination.
Thanks, Greg. Go ahead, Ruth.
Yes, Ruth Strong, Municipality of Highlands East. I'm councillor for Ward 4. I, like many other people, my biggest concern is the raise in taxes. Now, my question is, the debt. Each municipality has a certain number for the debt. Now, if at the town hall meeting in Wilberforce, it was expressed that each municipality would not share each other's debt. Everybody would work independently. I don't understand how that's going to work, but maybe someone can tell me how that's going to work.
Thank you for your question. And through you, Warden Burton, if there is an amalgamation, money that has been contributed to reserves by the residents in the local townships stays with those property owners and those local residents, similarly with debt. So what would happen through amalgamation, and there'd have to be an agreement that's drafted up, but debt that is due to local decisions made by local councils that's existing will need to continue to be paid by those ratepayers. Eventually, if there was amalgamation, once all that debt is paid and once those reserves that have been set aside for those townships, that will eventually get paid off or maybe get drawn upon. And then you would see rate stabilization or the same rate potentially throughout the townships or across all properties.
And if I can, Maureen, I can add to that. In the restructuring order that created the city of Quinte West, there's specific provisions that the minister required in the formal legal agreement, and we called it ring fencing the debt and the reserves to do exactly as Maureen said, because the people who have paid into those reserves should get the benefit of those reserves until they're exhausted and played out. So it was formally put in the restructuring order, so it was clear to the new council that if there was $1 million that had been invested in capital reserve in Sydney Township, that reserve would be spent for that ward, which was Sydney Township, old Sydney Township, until it was the city started to create its own, or I guess consolidated reserves would be the way to say it. So it's a way of just protecting the investment that people have already made in their reserves or in their debt, so that, as I said, that those who paid get the benefit of it until they're used. And then there's the common approach. But it's put in the restructuring order so that it's legal and everybody knows what the rule is.
So then each municipality then could possibly have a different tax rate.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Ryle.
Yeah, I was following along the same basic thought pattern. And that is, for instance, when you get to harmonization, which is what this is all about. And I know when we were dealing with it at the health unit, it became a real major issue because the idea of taxes going down, or in this case, levies going down, was just not, it wasn't real because of the cost of what was going on. The cost of operating even a merged unit was much higher than it had been before. So nobody got any reductions. But having said that, some of them got some significant increases over what the levies would have been before. So we have to deal with that. And then you get into the debt harmonization, you get into the implementation costs, because that's not going to be cheap. It's going to cost something. To assume that we're going to be able to do this with all of our own staff, something tells me that ain't going to work. Because if they're doing this, how are they going to get their regular jobs done? So there's going to have to be additional costs associated with that. So I would like to see and hear if we have any estimates, and I understand we're only dealing with estimates at this point. But if we get a rough idea of what this is going to cost, and if somebody turns around and tells me that it's going to be around $600,000 or $700,000, then I need about a 40-page document to explain to me how that's going to work. Because typically it's a lot more than that, and it takes resources too. So to do it in a short period of time, not so much the decision to do it, but the decision to physically go through all the changes itself is going to take more than a little while. And so I need to know, or I'd like to know, what's the schedule for doing that? How are the costs going to be impacted and absorbed? I realize that in scenario 2, there is a piece there that is going to be looked to by the province. Marvelous. What's the approximate number we're looking for? If we're expecting the province to come to the table, do we have a rough idea of what that number is going to be? Because my experience with them is they're not always reliable. They have a tendency to say one thing, and sometimes they don't necessarily follow through. So I would like to see a much more descriptive picture of what this whole impact is going to be to the taxpayers. Because if we're going to be spending a lot more money to do option 2, then we're going to get back in return, because if we're not going to get the return back immediately, it's going to take a few years to get some of the money back from what we're investing. I get all that. But the taxpayer and the people that we represent have to know what approximately that's going to be within a range. And so I would very much like to see that number approximated in some way, shape, or form. and I am again convinced, I'll repeat it one last time, is change is not synonymous with amalgamation. Change can be implemented in various ways. So I just like to have that information so I can give it to the people or can be obtained by the people that I represent.
I think, yeah, Warden, I think I can answer part of the question and maybe Mr. Fine and Ms. Adams can jump afterwards. I think part of the process going forward is at stages of the process we're in. Right now, I think it'd be unfair to give a number as to what the implementation cost would be. But as we move forward and start narrow down to whatever model is being chosen, those implementation costs can actually be starting to calculated with a bit of finality on a both qualitative and quantitative basis. But also dealing with, you're looking at to your, I guess, the point of your question regarding the Model 2, which is amalgamation. That's our goal, is to work with the province and identify the fact that those type of costs we need support to do it, similar to what they did with the health unit with respect to, because you don't want to have to absorb the change costs into the budget you're trying to correct. Right, because all those things would be dealt with at the implementation stage of the thing before the finality of it was come into being. So to give you an estimation right now, I think would be a bit unfair to everybody. But it is what would be looked at as we move forward and whatever decision the new council makes on which options going forward, then we would be looking at integrating, identifying those implementation costs would be part of the decision-making process. And then we'd be working with the province for the necessary support to affect the change we're looking at doing, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Steve.
First off, thank you. I totally agree with what you're saying. You're talking about looking into a crystal ball that probably will not be clear until after a decision's made, which brings up the question, do we have to make a decision before we find out? Or do we have to do that? And secondly, in the third option, if we have a modified third option, we can pretty well get a better idea of what the costs are going to be prior to that. So my question and request is that we look at least a two option scenario where we're looking at the one, and in the event that it just doesn't going to work out because the province has chosen not to, that we have a fallback option too. Because I think all of us have said the same thing. We have to implement some kind of change over the next 4 years. What it is yet to be decided. So I would like to go at the end of this term, knowing that at least two options are being investigated, and the people going into these positions in 2027 or later in 2026 have the best amount of information they can get on what to choose.
Gary?
Thank you, Warden Burton. I think that's our intention, Councillor, is that with seeking the authorization of council moving out of today would be, unless directed otherwise, we would be doing the financial modeling on all four options as presented, unless directed otherwise. And that's where the intention of getting forward, the documentation I was talking about, is going through the public and getting into December, into the first meeting in the new year for the new council would have that level of information. And more we get into information, you can start identifying the cost factors when you're getting into structure, you're getting into things like that, what they would look like, then you can start narrowing down on space. So I think there is an opportunity to have an identification of what the cost will be, maybe not as definite as once a decision is made. So no, it's not, you have to wait to make a decision to final costs. There's ability to get the information that will help facilitate a decision going forward.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Dayu.
Thanks, Gary, for that explanation as well. I suppose my question is, piggybacking on top of Cease's, in that analysis that you've just identified, would you be including visually the short-term pain of whatever the implementation cost might be, followed up with the longer-term gain that we would get by absorbing that pain right up front, versus the do-nothing approach where there's no short-term pain, but the long-term pain could be considerable? And could that be something that's reflected visually for those of us who are visual learners? Because it is going to hurt. You've proven conclusively, and I'm grateful for it, taxes are going to be going up. This is not an exercise in making taxes go down. Taxes are going up. So are they going to go up gently? Are they going to go up fast now or in the future, or vice versa? I think that's the That's the piece that could be really interesting to see visually.
Jim?
I think it's true. If you looked at our forecast of levy increases over the next 5 years under the current approach, without any change, you know where you're headed. And that is a very conservative estimate, as Maureen indicated, without the use of reserves and no additional capital, I believe, in that. So that's sort of the bare minimum, if you wanted to call it that. So that's what you're facing in terms of the status quo, as we see it at this stage. Looking at the options, it's also about capacity building as well, in terms of being able to get the right amount of staff and the ability to do what you need to do going forward. And it's about finding ways to cut some of the duplication that currently exists. So those things are, we can do a detailed look at. Absolutely. It's helpful to know what your interest is really in terms of where to go and do this deep dive into the financial analysis, what it would take in the short term and what the longer term looks like.
Deputy Warden?
Mr. Pine, I'm just wondering if you would mind giving those of us here who may not have a full understanding, or those who are listening online who may not have a full understanding of the true meaning of capacity building.
Sure, through you, Burton, maybe I can answer that question. So I spoke previously about finance, so maybe I'll continue to talk about finance, right? So across your municipalities, you would have multiple finance staff. And if you were to bring that team all together under one management or, within one entity, well, now you've got capacity for more financial analysis. You'll probably have capacity to have a dedicated resource for asset management. Many municipalities have an asset management coordinator. You could potentially have a resource that's focused on cash flow, debt management, investing, reserves. And some of that capacity building also will yield better returns for the municipality overall, right? And when we talk about, long-term financial planning, consolidation of systems, right? So everybody's on the same system. When you think about one audit, so you don't have every municipality working on an audit at the same time, you will have a core team that are working on the audit, but by the same token, you can have your core team also working on other things, once a budget's approved. So that builds capacity, and it will build better capacity to make better financial decisions as a council. And you'll end up having better reporting that will come forward because people will have the time to be able to do the analysis to get council the information that they would like to have. Like those are just some examples, but it builds capacity. If we look at your roads departments, there might be an opportunity if it's treated as one road network and the scheduled plow routes for the most part could be properly planned and executed. Well, think about like when you think about the spring and the fall and sort of the shoulder seasons of winter control, well, now you have a bigger team that you can devote to different areas of the region for, whether it's ditch clearing, whether it's, taking a look at certain areas where things need to be trimmed back, all of the roadside maintenance. You also might have capacity now to buy equipment that you need can be shared across the region as a whole. So some of the stuff that you may have contracted out in that area, you might now be able to build capacity in-house to do that work rather than pay a contractor. And if you're paying a contractor between equipment and operator costs, it is typically significantly more expensive than using municipal resources and a municipal piece of equipment. So those are just a couple of examples, but that helps build capacity. It helps deliver, potentially a better service and being able to plan, better for the future. From an emergency management perspective, if there's flooding in one area, well, now you've got a bigger team within your jurisdiction to be able to devote resources to get the equipment, the resources, the staff needed to be able to respond. If you think about communications, right, everybody has different communications individuals amongst all of the municipality, including the county. You got 5 websites. You could have one website. You could have multiple people that are able to do communications so that it's not a worry when someone is not in the office or someone's on vacation or an emergency arises. Now you've got potentially a team. It doesn't mean necessarily you're going to have 5 people in communications, but now you're going to have those resources to make sure that you can do everything in that area that you need to do. And so that's how we would define capacity building. And I think that you could do that almost across any department.
Thank you. That helps a little.
Nancy. Excuse me.
Through you, Mayor Burton. As Mr. Van Dyke just mentioned, I just wondered, is there going to be a further cost implication for the financial analysis that would be required for the models proposed, or is that part of the scope of the project that you already have?
Great. Thank you to you, Councillor Roberts, through the warden. Yes, there would be an additional cost. The contract with Erin was to get us to this point now with the public engagement piece and the assessment of our current and forecasting into future costing. In speaking with you, we'd probably be looking at the assessment of the thing we're probably looking. I would estimate probably around another additional $75,000 in costing to complete that work at the detail going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Ryle.
Just one note. We talked extensively about options 1, 2, and 3. Option 4 has not been brought up. Is that an option we should pursue further in terms of investigation?
Opportunities there, certainly.
Okay.
I don't know how much support it'll get, but anyway, Councillor Casey. Nancy, go ahead.
My apologies. I forgot to put my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Casey.
Yes, just further analysis, 75,000. Any idea how long that's going to take? Or get more financial information?
Based on where we're at now, I'll just offer my opinion. I think we can do the work with our goal to targeting is to have the information ready for the new council first thing in the new year.
Okay. We're going to analyze our systems the way they are presently. However, as I mentioned earlier on, I feel that there's definite savings. And again, finishing what we started back in the day, 2022, of finishing up the service delivery review and maximizing efficiencies in each municipality through procurement, planning, and getting our own individual houses in order before we take further analysis to see what benefits are going to be that we have at present on that note. So if we're looking at wanting to provide good, solid financial background, to me, we should, again, like I said, get our own houses in order, maximize our own efficiencies. And if we allowed that to happen, and again, I'm not kicking the can down the road here, I feel that this is going too fast, as Walt said earlier on, with having big decisions made too quick. If we allowed a year, let's say, where we collectively work together, again, start talking more, as I mentioned earlier on, about efficiencies. And then we revisit or reconvene this conversation in a year. That's going to give new councils time to find their way forward in this whole process. Again, I don't believe there's a problem in running our financial model, I guess, in parallel now, but are we going to get good dollars in regards to results to the 75,000 we're spending to get good actual information? Anyway, I hope all that made sense.
Councilor McKechnie.
Yeah, I asked the question earlier in regard to one of our municipalities' situation in regard to the financial statements. So you're saying that the financial part of this process will be going ahead, even if it's not, I'm hoping that they probably are working on it right now, but if it isn't completed by December or whatever date, you're saying this financial process will continue going forward?
Jim?
I think that's entirely up to county council to decide if there's going to be further investment in this. Am I correct, Gary?
I would, yes, so that part that Jim, Mr. Pine's correct in the fact that that's a decision of council. But I think to Ms. Adams' comment before, yes, it can. The review can proceed with respect to the delay or whichever phrase you want to use regarding the financial statements, because of the data financial data you have, and Ms. Adams can correct me if I'm wrong, is the information exists, just not in consolidated form as a financial statement. So it's not like the information doesn't exist, right? That's how we could go forward with it. To get to the questions that council has been asking with respect to going forward, and all this process again is within council's purview.
Okay. And just one last question. Could you refresh my memory? What is the fee that we'd be at right now in regard to the consultants' fees?
I'm hearing the original budget for this was 200,000.
200, you said?
Yep.
200, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a resolution.
Okay. So, yes, with council's indulgence, I did add to the original resolution based on some of the conversation, and we'll modify if I've misinterpreted council's direction. First off, that the delegation of the Haliburton for the Haliburton County Affordable and Governance Study report be received, and further that CEO be directed to further engage ERN to provide financial and structural analysis of the identified governance models for presentation to the 2026-2030 term of council.
Could I have someone move? Oh, Councilor Carter.
Just a comment. I'm not really certain what all those words meant in the way you put it, but I think what really should happen now is that you should engage with EHORN to determine exactly what is going to be needed and get some sort of an estimate of time and dollars. So we can turn it over to you to say, hey, figure out exactly what needs to be done, and then you can come back and an approval, if you will.
I think from a timing perspective, for the approvals of councils, we're running into a bit of a wall right now. I think I can understand if I was given an upset limit with respect to what the cost would be, that would allow me to proceed. But if it exceeded that, then I would do my best to come back to the councils to figure out how to proceed.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that what we are asking for and what we can agree to is that it's something that's doable within a period of time.
Jennifer?
May I clarify, would this instruct EORN to proceed on the basis of all four models then? I sort of got the sense that we'd want to narrow that down.
Sorry. So from my perspective, I'm on the impression that there hasn't been direction to narrow it down. It would be on the four models. Some of them, two of them are pretty close together. I mean, analysis would be relatively similar. But unless without specific direction of council to narrow them down, it would be on the four.
Deputy Warden?
Thanks, To Councillor Dayu, because that is one of the points that I raised in the first place that I would like to have had a bit of a discussion about. I've heard from a number of different members of council and from the lower tiers that they're not sure that it's viable to proceed with spending money on all four of the options. And I was hoping for a bit of a discussion about the value of all four, or whether we should be looking at three. I've heard in many discussions that I've had with other members of council, with members of the public, that they cannot truly see a strong value in pursuing option number 4. And I think you've heard that from several other members of council here today.
Council, any comments on that? I don't have any problem with that at all. Cease?
I would totally agree with that. Yeah, because we're basically looking at the cost of doing 4 and the cost of doing 2 are not going to be that much different. And what are we going to get out of it? We're not going to get what we're looking for, which is a centralized system, if that's what we're going for with 2.
This?
Having said that, would there be a difference in what's being proposed for cost going forward if we only looked at 3 options as opposed to 4?
Okay.
I would, yeah, I would say there would be a cost difference because you have to put the time and effort into all 4. Because yes, there are similarities, but there are nuances that would make them different from one another. So there would be work involved in 4 versus 3.
Great. Could I have someone move?
Just like,
well, go ahead.
I'm not trying to confuse things, but I'm just sitting here thinking that there's 4 options put on the table, which the public are kind of aware of today. And I think if we dissected this right down to how much money it's really going to cost out of the $75,000, would it be more, how beneficial would it really be to get rid of one of the options versus them letting the consultant team do their job and give us all 4 financial, because that's what the public are looking at. If I'm outvoted, I'm outvoted, but.
If I can offer, I would just say from an efficiency standpoint to your comment, Councillor, is if we took it the maximum up to a maximum of $100,000, then if we would spend what we needed to spend and then go from there. That I think that would cover what we needed to do going forward. I think, and that would, to your point, I think, and you're analyzing all 4 models that have been presented today and have been in the public realm for about a week now. That would probably cover off what we needed to do.
I'll move that. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Shell. Want to read the resolution again, Gary?
The delegation of Haliburton County Affordability and Governance Study results report be received, and further that CEO be directed to further engage EORN to provide financial and structural analysis of the governance models identified up to a maximum cost of $100,000, and the results be presented to the 2026-2030 term of council.
I would like a recorded vote, Gary, if you would, please.
If I may, I think we heard $75,000 first off, and now $100,000. Could you just?
It was in response to I responded to a question from Councillor McKechnie with respect to the cost difference between doing the smaller analysis on a smaller number of models versus the larger, and my comment was to allow it to go forward is up to a maximum of $100,000 to cover any costs that would be maybe increased in doing the full analysis versus a smaller version of it.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess the elephant in the room is, does Highlands East want to be a subset of Dysart? I guess that's really what it boils down to. And Algonquin Highlands would be a subset of Minden Hills. I think I can categorically say for most of the people in Highlands East, the answer to that would be no. So if you want to pursue the 4 of them, that's fine, but I think you're wasting money on option 4.
Liz?
I mirror Councillor Ryall's comments. I think there needs to be more discussion about that. I'm fairly confident in saying that I don't believe that the municipality of Algonquin Highlands wants to be, lost in the shuffle and become part of the township of Minden Hills. And that's no offense to folks in Minden Hills, because they're great. It's just that, it's the whole identity issue that we've talked about all along.
Gary?
Just for clarity's sake. So by doing analysis, it's not affixing any import to any model. It's just providing the information to assess the models going forward to in line with comments you've just made, right? So it's by doing the 4 versus 3 or whichever the number is, it's by doing analysis isn't giving any weight to an option. It's providing the depth of information on that option for further assessment and consideration as we go forward in the process.
Have a resolution on the table. I'm not going to beat this to death.
I'm the one who kind of brought this up. I just thought for the $75,000, but why not throw in the last option? And but it seems that it's gone up to 100,000. I'm not in favor of spending it. I'm sorry.
I'm going to call a vote here in a second.
I would like to second the motion for the purpose of the vote.
We don't have a vote.
Oh, I thought we had, Councilor.
I have Bob and Lisa. Yeah, I'm Bob.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I'm going to, I want to record a vote, please.
You want me to read it one more time?
Sure.
Okay. That the delegation from the Haliburton County Affordability and Governance Study result be received, and further that the city is directed to further engage EORN to provide the financial analysis of the governance models up to a maximum of $100,000 for the presentation to the 2026-2030 term of council. Right. And a recorded vote's been requested by Warden Burton. Councillor Dayu.
Yes.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Councillor McKechnie.
Yes.
Warden Burton.
Yes.
Councillor Ryle.
Nay.
Councillor Shell.
Yes.
Deputy Warden Daniel.
Yes.
Councillor Carter.
Yes.
The yeas have it 7-1. Motion is carried.
Thank you. Guess we have the consent agenda here.
Second, let me catch it.
Break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We will take a 5-minute break, and those that would wish to leave, leave. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. The consent agenda.
That the items listed under the heading consent agenda for August 12th, 2026 be adopted as presented.
Could I have someone move? Councillor Dayu, Deputy Warden Danielson. All in favor? It's carried. Emergency medical services, Chief.
Hello, Warden Burton, members of council. I feel so alone.
You look
far away
alone
here.
Down here, we're played out in them.
Right. I'm here to present my staff report, EMS 06-2026, about the approval of the award for the mobile outreach van through RFP process that was conducted. We had three submissions, and Renasso was the winning bid based on the competitive process, and they come in within the budget. The budget is fully through the federal funding that we received from Health Canada through the Emergency Treatment Fund. And so looking for approval to move forward with making the award to Renasso to go ahead with the purchase of the van and the upfitting to the specs that we require for the program.
Okay, questions? Resolution.
The staff report EMS 06-2026 approval to award the mobile outreach van RFP be approved, and further that a bylaw be presented authorizing the warden and clerk to execute agreement with Renasso. Excuse me.
If someone move, Councillor Carter, second by Councillor Ryle. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Bylaws.
That the following bylaws listed under the heading consideration of bylaws being enacted and passed. Bylaw 4357 being a bylaw authorizing agreement with Renasso for the purchase and upfitting of the mobile outreach van.
Can I have someone move? Councillor Ryle, second by Councillor Carter. All in favor? It's carried. Confirmation bylaw.
The bylaw 4356 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of county council be considered to be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Have someone move. Councillor Casey, second by Councillor McKechnie. All in favor? It's carried.
Councillor Casey.
Adjournment.
That the August 12th, 2026 meeting at Haliburton County Council be adjourned at 12:20 p.m.
If someone move. Councillor McKechnie, second by Councillor Dayu. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff.